Well, for more on Joe Biden's bid for the presidency, I'm joined by Dr. Richard Johnson, a lecturer in US politics at Lancaster University in the UK. Now, Richard, Donald Trump was quick to tweet a response to Joe Biden's announcement. Do you think Biden is his biggest threat?
I think that Biden, if you look at the 2016 election, would have been the person who is the obvious person to have defeated Donald Trump. It's hard to imagine that Biden would have done so poorly in the Midwest in a way that Hillary Clinton did, which ultimately delivered the presidency to Donald Trump. But I think the question is Joe Biden the candidate for 2020? And I think that's the key question that he's yet to answer. Is this purely a sort of nostalgia run, a kind of sense of a missed opportunity, or is he offering something new and attractive in 2020?
There are several issues, though, from Mr. Biden's past that could come back and haunt him during his bid for the presidency.
That's right. Joe Biden has been in politics for 48 years. That's 2 years longer than John F. Kennedy lived his entire life. And obviously in that time, he's had to take stands which now don't sit well with where the activist base of the Democratic Party is. You know, Biden was a much more moderate figure on racial politics earlier in his career. He was an opponent of busing to integrate schools. He authored the 1994 crime bill, which many people credit with leading to huge increases in the incarceration rate in the United States. And so these are things that he's going to probably have to answer for now in a way that he really didn't have to back in 1988 or even in 2008, because the expectations of the Democratic base are so different.
Well, he's already been criticised by other Democratic hopefuls such as Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. Is he prepared for this fight?
Well, he comes in as the front runner, and that's a difference from 1988 and 2008. And every vice president who has sought the presidency since 1960 has been nominated by their party, with the exception of Dan Quayle. So history is on his side in terms of winning this nomination. He comes in with huge name recognition. He comes in with huge favorability ratings. 80% of Democrats have a favorable opinion of him. But that's not the same as saying that 80% of Democrats will vote for him. 70% of Democrats have a favorable view of Bernie Sanders. So this is going to be a crowded field. This is going to be a field where the delegates are allocated on a proportional basis, meaning that it's going to be very hard for any candidate to amass a majority of delegates. And so this is going to be, I think, a long, tough slog. So he comes in at the start, but it's by no means guaranteed that he's going to secure the nomination.
And who do you think will pose the biggest threat to that goal for him?
I think that Bernie Sanders comes in with strong support from activists, particularly on the left of the party. He comes close to matching Biden in terms of name recognition, unlike other candidates. I think Kamala Harris could be a very interesting candidate. As an African American, she's someone who could perhaps speak to that community in a particular way. Again, because these delegates are allocated on a proportional basis, and minorities make up 35% roughly of the Democratic electorate in these primaries. Someone who could lock down basically a quarter or a third of Democratic primary voters is going to be ipso facto a formidable challenger to Joe Biden. So I think Sanders and Harris would be the ones that I'd have my eye on, as well as perhaps someone like Elizabeth Warren.
And Richard, you mentioned before that what's key for Joe Biden is what he has to offer that's new. What kind of strategy do you think he's taking in this campaign that might be different from what he's done in the past?
Well, looking at his announcement video, I think that, you know, if we're trying to discern some kind of policy offer from Biden, it a little bit seems to be more about America's re-engagement as a world leader. And that's certainly something where Donald Trump has been different from his predecessors, that he's been much less keen to be a multilateralist with the United States at sort of the head of a kind of Western foreign policy alliance. And so, you know, Joe Biden was someone who was very interested in foreign policy as a senator. He was on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. And so perhaps perhaps that's something that he'll try to use to distinguish himself from his other opponents in the primaries, to say, I'm the sort of person who will restore American leadership in the world. And that may be something where he can have a particular and unique voice.
And just finally, Richard, what factors might actually set him back in this campaign?
Well, I think that, for a party which is putting more priority on the representation of historically marginalized groups, an older white man is probably not going to be as attractive, particularly to some younger voters, but that's not to say that counts him out. Bernie Sanders, I think, is getting support. And is obviously the same demographic as Joe Biden. He has historically made mistakes in his verbiage, gaffes. We might be in a world where that matters less in politics, particularly given Donald Trump and his effect on politics. But Joe Biden has in the past made some intemperate remarks, and that has cost him. So that would be something he'd want to watch out for in the months to come.
It is going to be a fascinating race right up to 2020. Thanks so much, Dr. Richard Johnson, for joining us tonight.